And I guess you can see me doing this.
Actually, we can't see the chat. We can just see the screen that you're sharing, the welcome alternative.
Oh, okay. Good.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, welcome everybody.
Oh, the chat is disabled.
That is correct. I just disabled the chat.
So,
okay.
I think we're going to do a lot of talking to each other instead of in the chat, where unfortunately I'm going to be doing a lot of the talking in this meeting. And it makes me stressed out a little bit to have to do to try to monitor the chat and do everything else. And in this meeting, I'm giving a presentation, and it's a pretty long presentation, but it's actually more intended to be sort of a guide to a discussion. So I want people to interject and make comments and ask questions, and we'll see how it goes. This was one of the hardest sort of discussions for me to figure out how to format, and we'll see if I had any success. So here's our agenda for the meeting. It's sort of our pretty standard agenda. At the last meeting, we had 18 people. We had 3 great presentations. And those, you can see them on the YouTube channel for the league. And the slides for all of those presentations are in our folder. And then the topic for this meeting was for me to finally do a presentation. I've been talking about the need to do something about understanding the structure of elections in Colorado. So guess what? Now I'm up after being on the agenda as a possible speaker the last few months. A few announcements, and feel free to jump in if you have anything else to add or say. The General Assembly convened for the 2023 session on Monday, January 9th. We heard a little bit about an RCV for presidential primaries bill that may be in this session. I haven't seen anything about it yet. If anybody else has, please speak up. On Saturday, there's going to be the League Ledge Day, and Senator Chris Hansen, who's also happens to be running for mayor, is going to speak of Denver, is going to speak about quadratic voting, presumably how it's been used in the legislature to determine budget priorities. There's an article
which has absolutely nothing to do with his mayoral run. Absolutely nothing.
Right. But you might hear his name in the future. Maude, you want to say something?
Would you like me to monitor the chat? Would that help you?
Sure.
Actually, I think the chat's disabled.
I think it's disabled, yeah.
Okay, then I won't monitor the chat.
I think it's back on again.
Oh, it's back on. Would you like me to monitor the chat?
I do not want to monitor the chat.
Somebody else. Oh, it's disabled again. So whatever.
I can turn it on and have Maude monitor, or I can turn it off. Which would you like?
I prefer it off during the actual presentation, which hasn't started yet.
Okay, Maude, I believe you should be I'm going to turn it on. Maude, under the security tab, you should be able to turn it off once the presentation starts.
I am not a co-host.
Celeste, would you be so kind as to make Maude a co-host?
I would be happy to. You should be a co-host now. I will continue talking about announcements. The January 31st, I think that's a Wednesday, maybe Tuesday or Wednesday, Tuesday, maybe. It's there's an introduction to special districts. It's actually something like special district elections, the elections you've never heard of, or something like that. And I think it's a fascinating topic. There are 4,000 special districts, 2,000 of them are metro districts, something like that. I think it's sponsored, yeah, the League of Women Voters of Colorado's Elections Task Force is sponsoring it. And we talked about the Boulder County League's election timing study and Jeffco League sponsoring it too. I don't know what's happening with that. And we've also been talking to Tammy Story about this because she's carried bills on special districts. Are there any other announcements that people want to know about? Want to tell us about?
This is Beth. I would love to mention that LWVCO is hosting a get-together before their tattered cover talk. Major Garrett, who is the NBC National Washington correspondent, and David Becker of the Elections Integrity and Research Foundation. I think I have that wrong. Someone please correct me. Have teamed up on a book called The Big Truth, Defending Democracy in the Time of the Big Lie. And we'll be doing a tattered cover talk on the 25th of this month. LWVCO is hosting a reception with both authors just before this talk from 5 to 7 at the C Film Center, which is directly next door to the tattered cover on Colfax. Please register at LWVCO or Colorado.org. Thank you.
Thanks, Beth. Okay. Next thing. Just a reminder of our meeting norms. We're dedicated to a harassment-free environment to facilitate productive dialogue. I hope we have a lot of dialogue today, productive, preferably. And a reminder that the League speaks with one voice based on our positions reached through member consensus. Speaking on behalf of the League requires the agreement of League leadership. Let's do some meeting introductions. You've all heard Beth already. She's our executive director from the State League. Maud also is the, you've heard from her. I'll let you introduce yourself, Maud. I'm the task force facilitator, and I'm a member of the Boulder County League. I live in the city of Boulder. I use she pronouns, but my favorite is when you address me as you, because then you're talking to me. Brenda, do you want to do the normal checking everybody?
I can do that.
I'm going to stop sharing my screen so we can all see each other for this.
Okay, I'm Brenda Freeburn from Gunnison, representing the Gunnison Valley League. Pronouns she. I'm not sure what else. So I'll just go around and let everybody else introduce themselves. How about Jeff?
Jeff Withers with the Denver League, pretty new member, getting my feet on the ground.
Welcome.
Thank you.
And Jeff is on LAC also for voting and elections.
And I think revenue.
And revenue too, yes. If there ever is any.
All right, Pat. Are you there? We'll skip Pat. How about Jean?
Hi, I'm Jen. I'm with the Boulder League. I use she, her pronouns.
Thanks. Mary?
Hi, I'm Mary Carver. I live in Loveland and I'm relatively new to the league. I'm not officially a member yet. I don't know if I should do that at the state level, but someone can check with me later on that. So I'm
did.
learning about this, and I've got some background helping with ranked choice voting for the Fort Collins folks. Even though I'm in Loveland, I help them distribute literature and do a few other things for those folks. But I'm basically here to learn about this committee and hopefully get more involved.
All right, thanks, Mary. Okay, Pat, I heard you join a minute ago.
Yes, frustrated because I can't somehow get my video on. Pat Venturo, I'm also in the Boulder County League and been on the voting methods team for a number of years.
And Thalia.
I can't get my video to work either, so I don't know why that is. But anyway, I'm with Brenda in the Gunnison Valley, a new member of the Legislative Action Committee, and we'll be working on voting in elections there, as well as reproductive justice.
Neil?
Same issue here with video, and I've been engaged with election methods since the 1990s and with election integrity also for several decades, active with the voting methods team in Boulder.
Great. Okay, Dwight. Are you there, Dwight? Okay, we'll come back.
Put something in the chat.
Hold on.
Oh,
I
there he is.
muted myself. Sorry. My name is Dwight Shellman. I'm the County Support Manager for the Elections Division of the Secretary of State's office. And when I tried to turn on my video, it said video disabled by host.
Mm-hmm.
Oh. I will, you know what? I think let me see if I can fix that.
Okay, and Martine.
Oh, so I got the same error message about the video, but you can see me in the little picture, I hope. Mm-hmm. Hello, everyone. My name is Martine. I'm a member of the League of Women Voters of Boulder County. I'm also on the board as well as the voting methods team. Nice to see you all.
It's nice to see you. I think I got everybody. If I missed anybody, please speak up.
Me.
I'm sorry. This is Dwight Shellman again. I'm here in my personal capacity only. I think we're going to be talking about a lot of things that, with a lot of moving pieces in the Secretary of State's office and no decisions that I know of have been made. So I'm just, I like to watch Celeste work. So that's why I'm here. Thanks.
I think people should be able to show their video now. I'm learning a lot about Zoom still 3 years later.
Success. Thank you. Good job.
Nice to see everybody's faces. Okay.
Yeah,
there's a
setting in Zoom.
Did you want to introduce yourself? I did skip you.
Yeah. I'm Maud Nerol. I'm state co-director for Action and Advocacy. And along with Neil was delighted to work with Neil on getting a new election security position studied and consensused and written at the state level, which we then turned around and used last session right away. So, delighted to be here. I also sit on the alternative voting methods, not on the elections task force, which is the one that has the meeting coming up on, thank you, Celeste, for pointing that out, the meeting coming up on the 31st on special election districts, which sometimes special districts, which sometimes don't even have elections. And Mary, the way to join your local league is the way to join league is through the local, which in your case, if you're in Loveland, would be Larimer County. So look for League of Women Voters of Larimer County, and you can probably use your credit card and join up, and they will be delighted to have you.
Well,
Nope.
welcome everybody. I guess I'll go back to sharing my screen.
And Celeste, let me know when you want the chat to stop.
I think you can disable it now.
Okay, I will stop the chat.
I'm about to start this presentation on Colorado's electoral structure and mechanics, especially in relation to voting methods. So let's go to this PowerPoint. As I said before, I wasn't sure how to format this. There's a lot of information here. It may end up being a 2-session presentation depending on the conversation, which I encourage. We have somebody else coming in. Okay. So if we want to make changes to Colorado's elections, we all need to start on the same page, I believe, with the same background and knowledge. And I want to point out the disclaimer in the footer, which is that the information presented here is intended to be accurate, but I recommend independent verification. And I'm very happy that Dwight is here and will keep me honest, I hope, and point out things because I don't know, I have some question marks in here. We'll see how it goes. Okay. So the plan for this is to review some voting methods and attribute charts, to talk about the state and national positions and our role in getting the majority criterion eliminated, starting to define the scope of any efforts we might undertake, and then discuss 3 questions that will drive our discussion, and we may not get through all 3 of the questions. So maybe like after the first question, we can stop and discuss more next time. And there's a lot of overlap, so we'll see how it goes. Okay, let me hide this if I can. Can you see the tab at the top, or am I the only one who sees it?
We just see your slide, Celeste.
Okay, great. So I think everybody here knows what a plurality voting ballot looks like. Very simple. If you're electing 1, you vote for 1. If you're electing 3, you can vote for up to 3. Most votes wins. The approval voting ballot is, in some sense, even easier because it's harder to mess up. If you mark 3 and you're only electing 1, it's okay. There's no such thing as an overvote, and you can show support for more than 1. You can show support for more candidates than are running for the position, or then there are seats to fill. And same as with plurality, the most votes wins. Star voting. STAR stands for score, then automatic runoff. So what you do is you score every candidate, which can be a lot of work if there are a lot of candidates, but you can always leave it blank. If you leave it blank, it's counted as a 0. The ballots often will recommend that you give your favorite a 5. If you have more than one favorite, you can give them both a 5. Ties are allowed. And then your least favorite is 0, and then score other people in between. So you can see in this one, you would add up all the scores on all the ballots, and the 2 candidates with the highest scores would then end up being in the final round. And you don't vote again in the final round, you just take the ballot. So if Alba and Bill are in the final round, this ballot has a higher score for Alba, so it would give 1 vote to Alba in the Alba versus Bill runoff. If Bill and Doe were in the final, you gave them the same score, so your ballot wouldn't count in the runoff because you gave them the same score. You're indifferent between them, evidently. And you're encouraged to give different values so that your vote will count in the final round. Any questions on star voting? Okay. A ranked ballot uses first choice, second choice, third choice, fourth choice. You rank the candidates in order of preference. Mark no more than one box in any column or row. So there are many different voting methods that use a ranked voting ballot. And the one that we're going to talk about here is instant runoff voting. So in order to tabulate this, all you do is you look at the first choice in the first round, and that's your vote. Your vote goes to Alba. And then if a candidate has more than half the votes with the first count, they win, and then subsequent rounds are unnecessary. It's just like plurality. You don't see the second, third, fourth, and fifth choices at this point. But if no candidate wins in the first round, you eliminate the lowest vote getter, and suppose the lowest vote getter is Alba, then this ballot will no longer count for Alba. Instead, the vote transfers to Bill, who's the second choice, if Bill is still in the contest. And if, suppose, like in New York City, I think there were 12 or 15, I don't know, a lot of candidates, 15 candidates, but you could only rank 5, I believe. So about 15% of the ballots didn't end up counting in the very last round. So those we call exhausted ballots. So you keep eliminating the lowest vote getter until one candidate has more candidates than all the other candidates put together. And then you have a winner. Or you can just keep going all the way until there's one candidate remaining. But that's extra transfers, which aren't necessary if you've got somebody with more votes than all the other candidates. Any questions on instant runoff voting? A lot of people call this RCV. RCV actually means a whole bunch of different ranked voting methods, some single winner, some multi-winner, and we're going to talk about some RCV confusion later. Okay, I'm moving on then. So here is a chart showing some attributes of single winner voting methods. We picked 5 methods, and a green is better than an orange or reddish. And you would likely pick different attributes. It all depends on what you or your community think is the most important, but we can go ahead and take a look at these. The first attribute is it allows voters to be expressive in their opinions of candidates. So plurality is called choose one voting, terrible. Approval lets you, it's called thumbs up or thumbs up and thumbs down voting. So you can give a thumbs up to every candidate, but you can't differentiate between the candidates. You can do that in SCORE. And in IRV, you rank the candidates. So you also have a preference order in IRV. The next row is, and please feel free to pipe up and say something if you want to add to the conversation, because we're starting to get into the more interesting stuff here. Does the second row, does the voting method record the voter's full opinion of candidates during the tabulation? Well, since plurality only lets you choose one, it marks the full marked opinion, but it doesn't let you say, it didn't let you say that much in the beginning. So it doesn't let you say, oh, I also like this candidate, you know? Brenda.
Yeah, and maybe you're going to talk about this, but I guess I'm a little confused why the IRV has one thumbs down on that row.
We'll get to that right after we go through. We're going to go in order here. Good question. Maud, did you have a hand up for something?
Yes, sorry. I'm a little confused the difference between SCORE and SCORE runoff star.
SCORE. Oh,
did you talk about those?
No, SCORE is instead of having the final runoff with the 2 highest vote getters, or the 2 highest scorers, we could say, they just say the highest scorer wins. So score is just add up all the scores, the highest scorer is the winner.
Okay, so there's no score, there's no runoff with it.
There's no runoff, yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so approval voting lets you can say something about every candidate, and everything you say about every candidate is recorded in the tabulation. Score and score runoff, everything you say about the candidates, and you get to say even more. You get to say a 5 or a 4, you get to give them a score, is recorded in the tabulation. In the score runoff part, there are 2 parts, and everything is recorded in the first scoring session, and then in the final one they only look at the 2 finalists, and but you also get your opinion, your preference between those 2 recorded. And then IRV, the reason it has a thumbs down, it doesn't have 2 thumbs down, it only has 1, is because if you look back here, you can't see the 3rd, 4th, and 5th choice. You only get those revealed if your higher choices are eliminated. So you can mark as many as you want, but if your first choice ends up winning, nobody will ever know, unless they get to look at the cast vote records. They'll never know what you thought of for 2nd, 3rd, and 4th, and 5th choice. That's why there's a down arrow there, a down thumb there.
And not to belabor that, but that just seems like if enough people vote for the first choice and they win, then the others are sort of irrelevant. I guess I don't know that would be a thumbs down in my mind. It might be 1 thumbs up, not 2, but you do get to rank everybody.
Right, and that's the first row. You get to be expressive in your opinion, but is that opinion recorded in the tabulation? And that's why it's a thumbs down on the 2nd row, but it's 2 thumbs up on the 1st row because it's very expressive on the 1st row. But was I going to say something else? So I hope that explains the difference there. Oh, and you know, long shot candidates really like knowing if people rank them anywhere, or, you know, like it's very nice for candidates to get a true picture of their support. So that's a good thing about, say, approval voting. The Democratic Party of Colorado is starting to use approval voting in vacancy committees. And, you know, even though you might lose, you could still get half the support of the people. And that makes you feel good, even though you lose, because other people got more. You can vote for as many people as you want. There can be several people getting majority.
I just wanted to chime in and appreciate the way that you've split that in 2 pieces. And I think a very clear reason why a thumb down on whether it records the full opinion in IRV is to look at the Alaska race, where if you look at everything on the voters' ballots, it's clear that the candidate who they preferred to the other 2 candidates didn't win, didn't even make it to the final round. So if you looked at the full opinion, at least the way that I view it, you would end up with a different result.
Thanks, Neil.
Otherwise known as a center squeeze issue. Thanks.
This is a very interesting topic to a bunch of people, and I've given a few talks on this, and I'm happy to go more into depth in this, but maybe right now we'll continue on with just basics. So in terms of the next item, reducing or eliminating the spoiler effect and resulting in a broadly acceptable winner. Plurality is terrible, as we know. That's why we vote for the lesser of 2 evils. Approval score and score runoff are all very good. IRV has that problem with that Neil just mentioned, and that's why it gets only one thumb up. It is vulnerable to the center squeeze. And I appreciate people disagreeing with this because, you know, you can argue that these are subjective, and we'll just keep going for right now. Okay, simple to implement. Maud, go ahead.
When you think we're ready for 102, this is 101, I would appreciate hearing more about the center squeeze.
Okay, I'm making a note. And we have an article also we could send you about it. Okay, in terms of implementation and simplicity, and Dwight is going to keep me honest here for sure. Plurality and approval voting are, well, we already do plurality, so it's super easy. Approval voting is, for single winner, is super easy also. It's no extra work, except you change the directions to say, vote for one or more, and you record the election results as a % of ballots instead of votes, because you can vote for as many as you want. So you want to know, was this person supported by 60% of the people, or were, you know, because the votes add up to more than 100%, the vote percentages. So that's not a good way to do it. Score is also easy to implement because we have computers that are very good at adding. Score runoff is a little harder, perhaps. I mean, it hasn't really been used that much, so it's hard to say for sure. But having to go to the second round and then compare the ballots is an extra step, so it's a little harder. IRV is the hardest because the ballot value actually changes. And so you start off with a ballot, a vote for Alba, and then it becomes a ballot for Bill. And that's a weird thing for audits. Yes, Brenda.
Yeah, I have a question on the approval. Easy to implement, but in today's environment, have you guys talked about the risk of either actual or perceived ballot tampering? I mean, if any number of boxes can be or circles can be circled in, it would be pretty easy if someone were so inclined and there was an opportunity to add in one more circle, and there'd be no way to know what the voter's intent was.
True. Right now, there's already the ability to tamper by filling in an extra oval so that it's an overvote and it doesn't count at all. But you're right that is something that, especially I think in a household, like if you leave your ballot laying around, somebody else could fill in another oval. There are a lot of security measures in the county clerk's offices to make sure that any tampering doesn't happen. I
think I was just going to say, in Colorado, the opportunity to alter a ballot like that would be after the ballot has been received in the county and the return envelope is being deconstructed after it's been signature verified. That task is performed by bipartisan teams of judges, usually a Democrat and a Republican, who have no reason to agree with each other on anything other than deconstructing the ballot envelope. So yes, there's always a risk there, but I think we do a good job of kind of designing the system to minimize that risk.
Oh, I agree with that. I guess my bigger concern is perceived tampering as opposed to actual tampering, just in today's environment, that once someone raises an accusation, there would be no way to verify what the original voter intended. Whereas now with the plurality, you know, they can look at it and, okay, if there's an overvote, I think my understanding is they still kind of go through and determine as best they can what they thought, and they could go back and contact the voter. But with just any number of circles or boxes filled in, it just seems like it would be harder to get to the real intent if there was ever any accusations or perceived notion of tampering. That's all.
There's some places that take ballot images of every ballot when they come in. And so you could compare the ballot when it comes in to what it looks like later. And Neil knows a lot more about that than I do.
How would you ever match ballot to ballot, the picture to the actual ballot? Because there's no identifier once the ballot leaves its envelope.
That's actually something that we carefully track the ballots and are able to match them, and that's how we do our risk limiting audits. In general, I guess I would just say that all of these, any kind of ballot is subject to various kinds of tampering at sometimes, and I agree with Dwight, we do a pretty good job of making that hard, but you could, you know, sow doubt on any kind of ballot under various circumstances. So I don't know that this is as relevant to the style of voting method as it is to kind of other election integrity questions.
Dwight?
Yeah, I think I personally would take issue with score being simple to implement and score runoff being star, you know, just having one thumbs down. There's no available voting system that's been certified by a state or federal authority to tabulate in that manner. That's, to me, a huge sort of institutional barrier I think it would require as much work, both of those, as much work as IRV from a system standpoint.
That's an interesting point. I've been told that Jan Koch, for instance, wrote some software that would do score tabulation. He's in Fort Collins.
That may be, but it's not certified. I mean,
sure.
Most states, and certainly this state, it has to be certified.
Right.
And so anyway,
it's a really good point, Dwight, and it's an important one that I've thought about a long time. But I've learned more recently that there are a lot of circumstances, including with ranked choice voting methods like instant runoff voting, where I think Maine doesn't use a certified system to do their tabulation. They use a certified system, I dare say, to collect the votes and to get cast vote records, and then they use external software to actually tabulate it. And I think that is not a bad model to follow, in the sense that what we care about with the security of a voting system is precisely getting to the point of a verifiable cast vote record that an audit can do checks on. All the delicate, incredibly delicate aspects of how to do security around voting, around, you know, getting the scans right and getting a good interpretation. But at that point, you should be able to publish all the information and allow people to do their own tabulation. And the state of Colorado, as I understand it, but you'll know better than I, does its own certification and could certainly say, okay, we are going to take a good hard look at the tabulation method that we use and rest secure in the fact that we can publish how it's supposed to work and let people do their own checks. Modulo, as I know you know, that there are still some delicacies around getting that evidence out to the public in a timely way.
Well, yeah, you know, we could not do what Maine did in this state. They, you know, used a certified voting system for the scanning. They extracted the cast vote record, and then they ran it through, I think it was basically RCV Resource Center's universal tabulator. We would not, under our existing law, be permitted to do that, which is an issue about the law, maybe. But
we're going to need to change the law to do any of these tabulation changes in the first place, right?
no, not IRV. Law's been changed.
Sure.
We adopted, but my point only is it's a lengthy process. We had to adopt, I believe, voting system standards, the first published voting system standards for IRV in the country. Takes a long time. And that just goes to my simplicity of implementation issue.
Go Colorado,
not
first
possible.
in the nation.
But wait, it just requires our brilliant people in the Secretary of State's office to do it. You're amazing. You can do these things. It's hard to do them in other places. You're great. Thank you so much.
Did somebody else have their hand up? I thought I saw a note that a couple people had their hands up. I can't see your faces, so speak up now if you want to. Okay.
Celeste, with Zoom now, anyone who has their hand up, their picture pops up for you.
Nope.
It goes,
I'm in a different situation, so I'm not.
Sorry. Okay. I will. If I see hands up, I will. Okay. And you're not getting to them, I will let you know.
Okay. I see a little note when they raise their hand, and then it goes away. Okay. The second to last row says the winner is likely to have majority support with more than 2 viable candidates, and we know that's not true for plurality. And I don't think we had enough information to come up with necessarily true green thumbs up here, but all of these are better than plurality in terms of getting majority support. So I'm not going to justify any of those. I'm going to move on to the next row unless somebody has a comment. In terms of promoting positive campaigns, plurality is terrible. Approval, since you can't differentiate, anybody who gives you a vote, it's as good as a vote for any of the other candidates. And score, there's still some differentiation. So you might talk a little trash more. And in IRV, we saw in the New York City mayoral campaign that it's not necessarily always positive. So, but it is likely to be more positive than the dirty plurality campaigns. Okay, I'm ready to move on to the next screen, which is going to be fast. If my screen will let me do this. Okay, I got this. It's a legal compliance checklist from Equal Vote. They are star voting folks. And we're not going to go over this. I haven't studied this in depth, but I just want to let you know, and this is also a draft. I just want to let you know that they're looking at laws around the nation and seeing which ones work for which voting methods. And I'm a little cut off here on the top, but their voting methods that they're considering are plurality, approval, IRV, and single transferable vote, the 2 main ranked choice voting methods, a Condorcet method called ranked robin, and then their favorite, of course, is star voting. So I just wanted to show this to you. We will talk a little bit about legal compliance later on. I have here the state league position and highlighted a couple of things. We support gaining on the ground experience with alternative voting methods. That's like one of the main idea. We also care about whether it's single winner or multi-winner. We learned that from Aspen, Colorado in, I think, 2009. Election officials should also conduct post-election analysis. Do you see any influence from Neil McBurnett on that bullet point? Okay, so that was 2017. That was our state position. In 2020, a group looked at lots of state positions and said, oh, we think we need a national position. And they wrote up a national position based on what a lot of people said in their state leagues. And we pushed back hard against the one that's crossed out. And we were able to get them to take out this majority criterion. When you have 3 people running, there is no voting method that will guarantee a majority of votes for a single winner contest. So, you know, the word majority is used a lot with instant runoff voting, but you have to be very careful. It's always a majority of the active votes. So in the New York City mayoral election, Eric Adams won with 40-something% of the vote, because there were 15% of the vote of the ballots were exhausted. So are you going to say that those people didn't actually vote in the election? They did vote, and they did not vote for Eric Adams. And so people who are opposed to IRV and ranked choice voting, often there's even a report called the false majority or something like that. So so this is a criticism that people should know about. I highlighted here the part about proportional representation for bodies, policy-making bodies. And that's something that's near and dear to our heart, and wanted to emphasize it. Okay, so Maud, yes.
And the reason Celeste is talking about positions is because before we in League can advocate or lobby for something, we have to have a position on the issue that supports whatever we're saying.
And this position and the Colorado position are on our Alternative Voting Methods Task Force webpage, as well as a new guide to voting methods, abbreviations, and terms that might be useful, because we throw around a lot of acronyms. Okay, so for this presentation, you know, there's so many different kinds of elections out there that first thing I thought was, how can we narrow this? So first thing is, we're only going to talk about real candidate contests. We're not going to talk about judicial candidate retention. We're not going to talk about ballot measures, like there was one in Oregon, and it actually used approval voting. You could vote for as many of the advisory ideas as you wanted, but we're not going to talk about ballot measures. But candidates don't have to be human. So when Stapleton was considering changing its name, they had a bunch of name candidates. So it ended up picking the name Central Park. And I just wanted to point out that I think that as people interested in better voting methods, we should encourage every organization we have any connection with to use a better voting method when they're like naming the library cafe, or they're figuring out, they're making a decision in city council, or quadratic voting in the state legislature. I just think it's great to get people in that mindset. So focus on candidate contests. I think we should limit our focus to single winner contests, because multi-winner contests, right, I mean, this is already a long talk, and multi-winner contests would make it even longer, especially if we start talking about proportional contests. But there's some things that, you know, we can talk about simultaneously, like single winner and multi-winner ballots typically look the same. Cumulative voting is an exception. I haven't talked about that, but the next slide is about cumulative voting. And by the way, all these slides are in our folder, the Alternative Voting Methods folder for this meeting's date. Both single winner and multi-winner contests can have voters from multiple counties voting on the same ballot contest. And I think right now, all public partisan contests in Colorado are currently single winner. Within a political party, thank you. Within a political party, they may have multi-winner contests in their assemblies to put candidates on their primary ballot. They can put a maximum of 3. on the primary ballot via an assembly, because you have to get at least 30% of the vote. And if you add 30 plus 30 plus 30, you get 90, and nobody else can get 30%. So the maximum they can do via an assembly is 30. But primaries can have more than 3 people because there may be some people who petitioned onto the ballot. Okay, I don't want us to forget the advantages of multi-winner contests. I did just put up the bold-faced text on the national position all about proportional representation. And here I want to show you, you got to turn your head sideways.
Back on that point for a second, Celeste. So what do you mean by long-term? Do you mean next month or next meeting we should talk about multi-winner?
After this talk, even in the middle of this talk, if we don't want to, but I'm trying to somehow narrow this presentation, but I don't want us to forget about it. So
thank you.
Here's an example of a cumulative voting ballot, which is used in a lot of southern, like at least 5 states. And it was often like the result of a lawsuit from the Voting Rights Act, because racial minorities were not getting fair representation, because with plurality block voting, the majority can elect everybody. But this allows you, you can see it says fill in no more than, it's seven squares or something. And so every name is listed there 7 times. So you can vote for Bobby Agee 7 times, or you can give Bobby 3 votes and, you know, the next person, Joseph Parnell, the rest of the votes. You can do it any way you want to. So this allows people who want to elect a minority candidate to put all their votes on the minority candidate, but it also has some waste. So it's called semi-proportional, but it's a very easy method to tabulate, I believe, and Dwight can correct me if I'm wrong. I'm sure you'll have to write all the paperwork for it, but it should be very easy because it's just a summation. You add up all the little ovals that are filled in for each candidate, and you get your answer, and the highest vote getters win. So, okay, narrowing our target a little more. We're not going to talk about any special district elections. They're run by they're overseen by the Department of Local Affairs. They elect a board of directors in May of odd years. And we're just going to work on Secretary of State, county clerks, town clerks. And if we can improve voting methods in regular elections, then maybe the special district voters will want a better voting method too. And then I think this is our last one. We're going to limit our focus to public governmental elections, not internal political party elections, which are quite interesting. And some of, at least I think the Democratic Party is working on using some better voting methods for their processes. But the League doesn't usually get involved in political parties' inner workings. I'm personally okay with us doing that, especially when there's a safe seat, and we would make a statewide rule. But we have enough on our plate, so I don't think we need to talk about this right now. Okay. In one sense, I want to broaden the target for this presentation. I think we should include recall and special elections. These are opportunities that can generate a lot of interest in many candidates. I think we don't have very many special elections, if any. Like when Michael Bennet was appointed U.S. Senator, there was, quote, a special election, but it was held in November, a year and a half or whatever after he got appointed. So it didn't feel like a special election, but it wasn't a 6-year term he was being elected to. So if anybody wants to has more information on this.
Even that wasn't a special election because that vacancy was filled by appointment of the governor. The only special election that I can really think of is a congressional vacancy. You have to have a special election for those, and we haven't had one in the state for many, many years.
Okay. You hear about these whenever they do happen. They're always exciting. And maybe there'll be one for George Santos's seat. Who knows? An interesting thing is that Fort Collins included recall elections in their 2022 ballot measure to elect city officials using IRV. Okay, so here's the first question.
Celeste,
yeah.
I'm sorry, one thing I just wanted to note, you may need to revise your narrowing slide a bit. Recall elections are a hybrid. They are a ballot measure coupled with a candidate race. So this is one special type of ballot measure that is within your scope.
Right, but we're not talking about a better voting method for the ballot part, the ballot measure part. We're only interested in, yeah. Okay.
Got it.
And in Colorado, there were in the past some places where if you didn't vote on the, do you want to recall this person, then your vote in the second part for a candidate to replace the person didn't count. But I think, but I know that's not true in Colorado. I don't know if it's true anywhere.
It used to be. It was ruled unconstitutional by the Colorado Supreme Court.
Okay, was it Colorado that did it? Good. There's also that very interesting election in Fall River, Massachusetts, where they recalled the mayor. Like he got 40%, he got, 60% of the people voted to recall him. And then there were 5 candidates to replace the mayor, including the mayor. And, he got 40% of the vote to replace himself, which was higher than anybody else. It was a crazy election. Okay, so here's the first question for us to consider. Let's look at our history and see what voting methods have been adopted and used, and what can we learn from those experiences. Maybe the reason we've got this better voting method at a certain city level or whatever can indicate that that's low-hanging fruit, or maybe we'll find a problem with the Constitution or something like that that will be a signal that we need to decide, do we want to work on this, or do we want to or do we want to work on something else? And statewide campaigns can be very expensive, and you have to have a statewide campaign if you have a constitution change statewide. Okay, so a little bit of history. This is just because we're in Colorado mostly. In 1909, Grand Junction started using the Buckland voting, which was also a ranked ballot. It's also known as the Grand Junction system. And more than 60 cities eventually used it, including Pueblo, Denver, Colorado Springs, Fort Collins. And I heard a Denver City Council member say, oh, Denver's already used RCV, but it wasn't RCV, it was Buckland voting. And Buckland was ruled unconstitutional in 1915 in Minnesota in a case called Brown versus Smallwood. It seems to have fallen out of favor. I know 1 or 2 people who are still fans of it, but we haven't really considered it. And some people argue that court case was not a very good ruling, but I think there's some other problems with Buckland, but okay. From 1917 to 1947, Boulder used the proportional RCV, which has many, many names. The most standard one is single transferable vote. Of course, Boulder called it Hare voting, H-A-R-E, after Thomas Hare, I think, for city council elections. We were the 2nd city in the nation to use it after Ashtabula, Ohio. In all, there were about 24 cities that used STV, with Cambridge being the only city from the 20th century that still uses it today. And in Cambridge, they call it PR for proportional representation. So, little history. Okay, let's talk a little bit about IRV, the single winner form of RCV in 21st century Colorado. This seems to be the voting method with the most buzz. In 2008, House Bill 1378 allowed municipalities and special districts to conduct elections using IRV or STV. However, if you look at the cities that did use it, Aspen in 2009 did it, and they had a problem because they conducted the IRV election for mayor, but they did not plan very well for the tabulation of the multi-winner council contest. And they had to scramble at the last minute to come up with a tabulation method. And there was, it was an unfortunate situation. The voters were unhappy, or some people were unhappy, and I guess they convinced the voters to repeal the method. I don't want to call it IRV because only part of it was IRV. In 2011, Fort Collins voters considered and rejected IRV, but then this past year, they adopted it for all their future municipal elections. And I suspect they're going to have success doing it because it's a better understood method now. In 2015, Telluride held its second IRV election. This was the only one which triggered an instant runoff. They were in the middle of a 3-election cycle IRV pilot, which is over now. And my understanding is they're not continuing on. Basalt has had an IRV election in 2020, but no runoff was triggered. There were 3 or more candidates, but one candidate got over 50% in the first count. Carbondale nominally uses IRV for mayor, but didn't use it in November 2016 when there were 3 candidates. And I think that might have been because it was a coordinated election and the county wasn't willing to do it, maybe something like that, but I don't know. Okay, then we start getting into like better planning. In 2021, House Bill 1071 said, okay, we need to help cities do this. Boulder had just passed instant runoff voting for their future mayoral elections. And so House Bill 1071 said, county clerks, you have to coordinate these IRV elections if cities ask you to. The single county cities have to do it, I think, starting in this year, 2023, and then multi-county cities like Aurora have to do it in another year or 2. Meanwhile, Dwight is very busy setting up administrative and auditing procedures. And we should be very nice to him because he has a lot of work. And you might also want to read the Secretary of State's Rule 26, which is titled Ranked Voting Method. Okay, let's talk about the student government at CU. They, in 2012, began using approval and block approval voting for its elections. Unfortunately, they have very low turnout, and I don't even think the students realized they were using approval voting. This past semester, they changed over to instant runoff voting and single transferable vote. The instant runoff voting is better understood. The election commissioner is a sophomore. I got the tabulation from her. It got the correct winners, but there were a lot of problems with how it was tabulated. And this is one of the reasons we're not going into a bunch of details about proportional voting methods right now. I put the RCV Resource Center in touch with the election commissioner, and I hope that they're able to get some software so she doesn't have to try to do this by hand, which is really hard with all the fractions and things that you end up with in single transferable vote. And you may have heard that they just changed the winner in a school board contest in Alameda, California, because of a tabulation problem. What happened there was that there were a bunch of write-in votes and they didn't count the write-in votes. And so they eliminated a candidate who should not have been eliminated. That candidate got a bunch of second choice votes from the write-in candidates. So anyway, they're a little embarrassed, and we should all learn from their mistakes. So I showed you a whole slide on instant runoff voting. There have also been some approval voting efforts in Colorado. Jonathan Singer, who's from Boulder County in particular, worked on several of these bills, and John Kafalis from Fort Collins also. So they were designed for nonpartisan elections. So school board, city council, and special districts. And the bills got a little better each time, including in 2017, everybody should now
Celeste, I think you just froze. Do you want to try turning off your video? We can't hear you.
She might not be able to hear us.
Neil, do you want to text her?
Sure.
Okay, thanks.
I bet she sees that we're all frozen, but I will send her a text.
Ah.
Huh, yeah, okay.
Okay, she's out.
I bet she knows. I won't bother her.
And Dwight, I wanted to thank you for doing a busman's holiday and joining us this evening, even with the proviso that you're here as a private citizen. But you probably don't know how many staunch fans you have in the League of Women Voters.
Thank you. My mother was a long-time member of the League, and she's passed away, but she would not forgive me if I didn't participate.
Was she an inspiration for you? How did you get inspired to get involved there in Aspen, et cetera?
That was just mere chance and coincidence.
Okay.
Oh well. I knew how to spell the word election, and I thought I was capable of running Pitkin County's elections, and they, for some reason, hired me.
So
on the, I was going to add, and I'll just wait for Celeste, but I think the bills that she listed, I don't think they were enacted. Oh, okay. Like, I didn't know approval voting was okay for special districts.
Yeah, we should probably and I don't see her getting back in. Neil, it might be actually good for you to text her and see if she
inquire.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if she now pays attention to her cell phone. She didn't used to.
Oh, that's right. But she has a house line.
No, she doesn't, but she's probably home.
Oh, yeah. Why don't you just call her? Why don't you just mute and call her? Oh, wait, someone's in the waiting room.
Yeah, we usually decide to do things like that right at about the time that somebody figures their stuff out.
There she is.
I'm back.
Yay.
I don't know what happened there, but anyway, it's all okay now.
Great.
We can't see you, but we can hear you.
Okay.
And Dwight was pointing out, we had a fan club session for Dwight while you were off. And he pointed out that the bills that you showed on that last slide were not things that were actually enacted. And
right.
You were probably trying to tell us that when you froze.
Yes.
So
it says I'm not allowed to screen share.
Oh, you know what? I need to make you co-host. I'm sorry.
Hi, Betty. Nice to see you.
Hey, Betty, welcome. Good to see you. Celeste, you should be empowered.
Okay. And same deal, I guess, that happened with the other people on not being able to see the screen, but okay.
And this time we can, oh yeah, we just see your slides, not the tabs.
Okay. So I was saying that this initiative 104 was part of a set of 4 democracy initiatives, where according to the 2 passionate young men who were trying to get this through, and they worked diligently for a year, and they got it approved for signature collection. But I don't know how they were going to get those signatures, because as far as I know, they didn't have the money to pay for signature gatherers. And then the pandemic hit, so that didn't happen. And at the same time that this initiative came through, there was another one on instant runoff voting for congressional elections. I think I mentioned it later, so we'll get to that. Okay, let's see if I can move my screen. Okay, one thing I want to point out is how quick and easy it is to implement approval voting. So in November of 2018, Fargo voters decided to start to adopt approval voting. And the next election they had, which was a year and a half later, they started using it. There's a great 30-second video ad with all the candidates asking for your votes as you try out the new approval voting method. In 2020, November, St. Louis also passed approval voting. They combined it with blanket primaries, meaning everybody runs together. It's not a Republican primary and a Democratic primary. Everybody runs together, and the top 2 vote getters went on to the general election. And they adopted it in November, and then the following March, 6 months later, 5 months later, they started using the top 2 approval voting. They had their primary. So when I said it was easy, this is some proof that a big city like St. Louis could adopt it so quickly. And that's one of the reasons they went with approval voting and not with, they looked at ranked choice voting, instant runoff voting, but they went with approval. So let's look at some head-to-head proposals, in particular IRV and approval voting. I mentioned the Colorado Initiative 104. That got approved for signature collection, but instant runoff voting to elect members of the U.S. House of Representatives got stalled when it was being reviewed by alleged lawyers, so it did not proceed in the process. The state of Washington had some interesting elections recently. Seattle had Prop 1. The question was, do you want to change from plurality to something else? And the something else was either 1A, that should be a 2, top 2 approval primary, or 1B, this bottoms up RCV, which is just like IRV, except you don't go to 1 winner, you stop when you get to 2 winners instead of stopping at 1 winner. And then whoever the 2 winners are would go on to the general election. So the approval voting effort submitted signatures, and when it got on the ballot, then some people said, wait, we think we should be asked about RCV, so we want to put RCV on the ballot, and council referred that There was some controversy over whether council should have done that, but a lot of money went into that election for signature collection, for advertising, for whatever. The League of Women Voters supported the RCV side. But there was a little bit of unhappiness in general about this, and it barely passed. On election night, they did not think it was going to pass, but it did end up passing. So they're going to start using bottoms-up RCV. Meanwhile, in Washington, there were 2 counties that—
You know when that will take effect? Because I think that's going to take a while.
I should probably know that, but I don't.
Many years. I'm not sure how many.
Really? Contrasting it with the quick approval voting. Okay. So anyway, meanwhile, in Clark County and San Juan County, which are not where Seattle is, Seattle's in King County, those 2 counties did not adopt IRV. So you got sort of a mixed message there in Washington. And then finally, an example in Missouri, there was an initiative to try the Final 4 IRV, which is what they used in Alaska with Sarah Palin, but they were not able to collect enough signatures. And I think in response partly to that, and also because St. Louis uses approval voting, they're planning a 2024 initiative. So you can see some of the machinations and how every place has its own rules and situations and proposals, and these are all things that are good to keep in mind when we are talking about what we want to do in Colorado. Here's an interesting thing. There may be a hurdle to using instant runoff voting statewide. And this goes back to that legal compliance checklist, which is not on the set of slides that I put in the folder because it's a draft, and I was willing to show it to you, but I didn't want to put it out there for the whole world to see right now. It's not my slide, for one. So Maine has instant runoff voting for all federal elections and for state primary elections, but not for the November state elections because of language in their constitution. And our constitution is similar to theirs. It states that the person having the highest number of votes shall be declared duly elected. And also for recalling, the candidate who has the highest number of votes shall be declared elected. So recall that I mentioned Fort Collins is including recalls in its instant runoff voting, but Fort Collins is a home rule city, so it's probably okay for them to do it. But the question is, can we even use instant runoff voting in the state? Or will we run into the same problem that Maine has? And we had a presentation, a great presentation from Deb McDonough from Maine. And I asked her this question afterwards because I forgot to ask during the meeting. And she said that she's working really hard on proportional RCV. And she said that she doesn't want to take a right turn and work on the state general elections right now. She's focusing on proportional RCV, but some people still are. She doesn't think it's going to pass for state general. We're going to get to change the constitution in Maine. The Republicans seem opposed to it. But I believe that approval voting would pass this legal hurdle because it elects the person with the highest number of votes, and maybe Star also. But this is a serious issue that we need to look at if we want to go statewide with instant runoff voting.
What is your quote from? Is your quote from the Maine Constitution or Colorado, or are they both the same?
Colorado, right there. Article 4, Section 3.
Oh, yeah, it is right there. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, Maude.
Sorry, you mentioned putting things in the folder. And I'm in the I logged in as a member and I'm in the LWVCO members document library. Is that where you were?
It's the folder that has your name on it, the Google folder.
The Google folder that has my name. Oh, that one.
Google
that
Drive.
One, the Google Drive one. Okay.
Google Drive folder, yeah.
Okay, sorry.
Okay. So here's an interesting thing, an interesting campaign strategy. It seems like there's a fair amount of success combining voting methods with other election
Before
reforms.
you go into this, I just wonder if Dwight has any thought on that constitutional question.
I'm embarrassed to say I have always wondered why the Uniform Election Code does not have a provision that says the person who gets the most votes wins in general elections. We have a statute that addresses primary elections, but not general elections. And I was not aware of this provision, and I looked quickly. I don't see any case law under this that goes to this point. I was not aware of this, Celeste. So see, I learned something too tonight. And I don't know what it means, Neil.
I got this from the STAR voting folks. They're the ones who made that legal compliance checklist, but we have some homework,
and
I think.
That may be why, I mean, I've heard, and I heard Celeste say at the beginning, there's a bill under development. I haven't seen anything, but something about using IRV for presidential primary elections, which would not transgress this provision. This applies only, as I read it, to the state constitutional officers.
Yeah, I don't think you can call it IRV. I like to call it something like 15% proportional 15% threshold proportional allocation RCV. That's what I like to call it.
Tell me how to put that on a ballot and I'll do it.
They call it presidential primary RCV. Either way works, but mine tells you more. Okay. So here's an interesting idea. Combine voting methods with other election reforms. So in 2020, Alaska had Measure 2, where they wanted to have, they call it Final Four, instant runoff voting, where you have a blanket, everybody runs against everybody else in the primary, and they had like 50 people the first time this happened. And then the top 4 people, you vote for one, it's plurality, you vote for one, and the top 4 people move on to the instant runoff voting general. And they combined that with campaign finance reform. And they care a lot about ethics, it turns out, in Alaska. I was reading about Mary Peltola and Lisa Murkowski and her father, and anyway, Alaska is an interesting state. And I just want to say here, I think plurality is not good, of course, and top 4 plurality is probably better than single winner plurality for major party primaries, because you end up with better candidates in the general election. However, the minor parties really don't like this, and they filed a lawsuit against it, but they were unsuccessful in their lawsuit. So that's, but if you looked at the ballot measure, Measure 2 in Alaska, pages and pages of it were about campaign finance reform. So, you know, I don't know how many people voted for it because of campaign finance reform and how many people voted for it because they wanted the instant runoff voting part. So just in a comment. And then same thing in St. Louis, they combined top 2 approval voting with a blanket primary. They had closed primaries before, and you didn't even need to vote in the general election because whoever won the Democratic primary would win. And so now people have an incentive to vote in the general election because the 2 best candidates have moved on. An example more locally, in Boulder, Colorado, question 2E, they said, let's directly elect the mayor, and let's do it using instant runoff voting. And I say they because they didn't contact the League of Women Voters when they came up with this idea. And in fact, anyway, so, and we ended up not taking a position on this because we have no program position to base something on. So we were neutral, or whatever you want to call it. Okay. So let's review kind of what we've learned. In terms of jurisdictions, municipalities, especially single county municipalities, seem to be the easiest targets. If you look at the places that have done it so far, that have actually held an election, it's Aspen, Telluride, Basalt. All small places. In the future, it's going to be bigger places, Broomfield, Fort Collins, Boulder. And that's only since this enabling legislation has come about. And we'll see how this coordinated election happens. And we've also pointed out that approval voting is very simple to implement. We've talked about instant runoff voting for state executive offices. It may be unconstitutional. We'll see. Approval voting's likely okay. We'll probably need a statute to change things. We've also got the legislature, CU Board of Regents, the State Board of Ed, county offices are under Title 30, I think it is. We have school board elections are under state law too. And then when it comes to federal offices, there are no known legal roadblocks, but of course, nobody is going to suggest a blanket presidential primary because that's not how presidential primaries work. Okay. Yes, Maud.
How long did you want this meeting to run? Because in theory, we started at 6:30, though it was, we had.
So why don't we finish answering question number 1, and then, and I was going to suggest the next meeting be February 13th, and we continue this discussion. Do we want to talk about that right now, or do we want to zoom through the rest of these? They're like 3 more slides.
I would suggest we set the next meeting in case some people need to drop off.
So the next meeting, I was proposing it be February 13th, given the Monday schedule sort of thing. Does that seem to work for people? The day before Valentine's Day? Everybody's quiet. I see a thumbs up. I see some thumbs up. Okay. Okay. Same time, same bat channel. Okay, why don't I go back and continue sharing if I can. I'm having, okay, here we go. Okay, so setting ourselves up for success, we should always check for any legal hurdles. We should always include the Secretary of State's support in terms of obtaining software licenses, setting up procedures. You can see that no city is willing to conduct their own election. Only towns have been doing it, or maybe small cities. We should run a lot of practice tabulation scenarios before the election so that we don't get the surprise that New York City got during their mayoral election, or that Alameda just got. And then, of course, if we're running a campaign, a lot of money and some endorsers would be very helpful. So the next, answering question 1, what else can we learn?
On that one, if you go back for a sec, I would add to this, and I think especially given the debacle in Alameda, I would add improving our transparency. And again, Dwight has tried to get things clarified and improved, but we still don't share cast vote records. And it wasn't until Alameda shared their cast vote records somewhere, and I don't even know if they did it fully, but they shared it with somebody who noticed a problem, and they changed their results after certification, which I'm sure Colorado would not want to be doing. And citizens, just deserve to be able to tabulate these things before certification. So I would add to this list.
I will
have success.
I will add to it.
To ensure that cast vote records are shared with the public before certification, before the audit, actually.
I'm hoping that this will be a useful set of slides that we can go back and look at, as a reference. So yeah, I'll definitely add that. Okay. So in terms of multiple reforms, of course, anybody thinking about proposing a better voting method should consider multiple voting methods, because they all have their pros and their cons before you settle on one to pursue. We have seen that presenting one voting method is likely to result in success. We are in serious reform-minded times. Everybody wants to improve democracy. But if you present two methods and they're competing against each other, it's a tougher sell. Voters they might just say a pox on all your houses, and we certainly don't want that. And then, this strategy of presenting a new voting method with another election reform has been successful, but anytime you combine ideas, you don't know what the effect is. We don't know the electorate's true feeling or knowledge about the voting method part of it, unless you have a two-part question. Okay, this is another question to consider, and I think we'll stop here. I'm going to go to another slide. Whoops, wrong one. Okay. So the question is, what should we, I thought we would continue this discussion next time. I wrote here a couple of things that we could assign people to do, like figure out about the legal hurdles for state executive offices. We might want to recruit somebody to talk about cumulative voting, because that's an easy one. And maybe given how hard some of this stuff is, we might be willing to settle for a semi-proportional method. I don't know, just an idea. And then find out the status of the RCV bill.
Can you read in the chat briefly? This is probably a good time for us to be able to share any final mentions.
I'm gonna, I think I'm not in charge of that, but we have
chat should be enabled.
Okay. And basically the meeting's over if we're okay with continuing this discussion next time. And I guess I'm curious, what did people think about, was this useful?
Yes.
Okay, good. Because Brenda, you were knocking my 50 slides.
I was just afraid it was going to be like so much, but for me, that was really, really helpful. I learned a lot. Thank you.
Good, good.
Yeah, I thought it was excellent.
Will this be on the YouTube channel?
The recording should be on the YouTube channel. We're recording it, aren't we? Yeah.
We are recording.
Yeah.
Okay.
I just have to, Beth, it went off because she had several young adults in her home who were clamoring for dinner. And she was outnumbered.
I did add something in the chat, just some further thoughts, because Dwight made some good points about kind of the challenges at the Secretary of State's office in implementing different methods. And I just think it's also valuable to note ongoing costs that in terms of ballot size and costs of printing and explaining the complexity and so on with some of the methods. So
Neil, a lot of that is question number 3 of the 3 questions in the talk. So
it relates to the
feel free to look at the slides, Neil, and if you know, we can improve them before the next meeting if you want.
You've done an amazing job. I'm in awe.
Yes, Celeste, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. This is
I just wanted to say again, just my personal view, but the way to make inroads in actual elections on alternate voting methods in Colorado, home rule municipalities, which every municipality listed by Celeste has been a home rule municipality forever. They really have plenary authority on how they conduct their municipal elections. So what happens in home rule municipalities, they just have a lot more flexibility. So I just wanted to point that out. And, you know, they've been able to run those elections since forever. And relatively few municipalities have adopted those methods. Special districts have also been permitted to use ranked voting since 2008, and none has ever adopted it. And that may be an objection to ranked voting or just not interested by the governing bodies of those political subdivisions, but
maybe just not interested in democracy by those political subdivisions.
they have a hard time finding candidates too.
They don't ask for candidates. In fact,
they don't want candidates. They want the board to run.
They say, you can't run. You haven't been here long enough or whatever. But go to the meeting on January 31st and you'll learn a lot about it, I'm sure.
Well, there are some special districts that actually have a high ethical standard about elections. They just can't find people to run. It's just like an HOA or something, you know.
Yeah, all of the above.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway,
so Dwight,
I thought it was great. Lots of useful information.
Mm-hmm.
Great. Dwight, you mentioned home rule municipalities, but basically the only thing that a city can get the county clerks to coordinate is an IRV election, right? Like if they wanted to do an STV, they're not set up for it. They could say no. The county clerks could say no.
Well, the clerks can always.
That's true.
No, they can't.
No, they not
anymore.
Not on municipal IRVs.
Right. There's some that they can't push back on, but in general, if a municipality wanted to do something weird, a clerk could say, well, I won't coordinate it, right?
Yes. I think that's true. It's very unclear, frankly, legally. I was going to say something and I've forgotten, and I know we're over time, so I'll shut up.
Can I ask Dwight a question? Dwight, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Absolutely. Are there any cities or counties or towns that have voting machines that communicate through the internet with a database?
Certainly well, we're going to get into an argument here with Neil. I will say county clerks, the systems that county clerks use cannot be connected to the internet.
Okay.
We do allow for some voters electronic ballot delivery and return, which some people would classify as internet voting.
Oh.
I don't, but computer scientists disagree with me. So
there's this bill that Rod Bockenfield introduced that is sort of a mystery to me, at least.
I don't think I'm aware of it. I haven't seen it.
It's a
House Bill
two-page bill.
1023.
It simply says a voting system can't be capable of wireless connectivity. It's kind of a quote from VVSG 2.0. I don't know if that technically could be applied to existing systems or not.
Well,
I think it's a recent.
That's not a requirement for the certification that we provide under the 2002 voting system standards. Going forward, when we adopt VVSG 2.0, then that's an issue. Yeah.
This would as I read it.
Many of our voting systems have, Wi-Fi antennas or capability, and during the process of Trust to Build, our voting systems team disables that functionality at the BIOS level and changes the BIOS password. So the county can't change it back. So we do everything we can to ensure that that functionality is not operating in Colorado.
Okay.
Thank you, Dwight.
Thank you. Right now, for those who we're here for the voting methods part, I'm happy to stick around and talk some more about this other stuff, but I don't want to keep people. Yeah. I did want to say, Barbara Kelly, I know Betty is from the Jeffco League, and Barbara, if you wanted to just say hi and tell us where you're from, or we'd love to meet you.
And Barbara, you're muted.
Better. I live in Broomfield. I couldn't connect to this meeting through the League of Women Voters. I wrote to Beth. She sent me a link. That's why I was late. I liked what I heard. I would like to see a transcript or a recording of it.
So Barbara, the recording should be on the League of Women Voters YouTube channel. So if you go to YouTube and put in League of Women Voters of Colorado, you should be able to see it.
Perfect. Thank you.
We'll put the we'll put the link in the next meeting minutes, and probably it'll go out in a email at some point in the near future. You can probably stop the recording now, I'm thinking. If you know how
Barbara, since you didn't register, Dwight, thank you. Bye. Thank you so much for your time and all that you do for the state.